Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another paranormal video to share with you guys, which is also going to serve as day 4 of Vlogmas 2019. I knew going into this Vlogmas that I didn't want to give up my sit down videos, so like the paranormal ones and the book talk ones, so I'm just gonna keep them and weave them in through Vlogmas, and today it's a paranormal one. Today we're actually going to be talking about two particular castles in British Columbia, which of course is in Canada. And what's extra interesting about these castles is that they were both owned by two members of the same family, the Dunmere family. One was owned by Robert the father, and one was owned by James the son. Now, when I was doing research for this video, I read that a lot of people consider Victoria to be one of the most haunted cities in North America. I would have to imagine that St. John's, Newfoundland is up there as well, because there's so many ghost stories about St. John's. But anyway, today we're talking about British Columbia, and first we're going to talk about Victoria, which was where the father, Robert, built his particular castle. The only thing is, Robert didn't make it to actually live in the castle. He didn't live that long. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Robert first, and then we'll get into the hauntings of this castle. Now, I'm just going to read it here so I get all the facts correct. So, it says, fit for a king, Craigdarroch Castle was home to the man who was not so affectionately known as King Grab, Robert Dunsmuir. Robert was regarded as a greedy entrepreneur by much of the province, who believed he had achieved his success by any means possible, including paying off politicians and taking advantage of the working class. Everything I've read about Robert, people report of like just bad feelings towards him and the way that he made his money. So it says in 1887, construction of Craigdarroch Castle began. And now it was spread out over 4 floors. So it was quite a large, I'll insert a picture. I'm just gonna scoot on over. I'll insert a photo here so you can see it for yourself. So there are 39 rooms inside the castle, and it was said that each one was just more grand, more magnificent than the one before it. And at the top of the grand staircase, there was a ballroom. And he had built it there with the express purpose of entertaining the social elite. They were going into this castle ready to be entertaining celebrities and socialites, and just they knew it was going to be a hotbed for entertainment, and they wanted to make sure that it emulated the type of elegant lifestyle that they wished to have. Also, in throwing all these parties, Robert had grand ideas of being able to marry off his 3 daughters into good marriages because of someone they'll have met at the parties. So it says here it was a grand plan for a grand home, but Dunsmuir would not be afforded the luxury of seeing it through to the end. He died in 1889 at the age of 63, 1 year before construction of the house was completed. There was a bit of mystery surrounding his death as well, because for all accounts he was in perfect health when just one day he got a cold. And then soon after that he fell into a coma, and then soon after that he died. So it was just kind of, people were puzzled by how his health deteriorated so quickly when he seemed to be in good health. After that, there were just more tragedies and hardships for the family, starting with shortly thereafter Robert's death, the architect of the castle, Warren Haywood Williams, he died of an enlarged heart before he was able to see the castle get built. So it's like all these people that were such pivotal members of getting this castle built are now passing away before they can even get to that finish line and see it finished. In 1889, the second Dunsmuir daughter, Angus, died of typhoid fever, and her husband, John Harvey, died of the same disease shortly after. And they had children who were now orphans. So now, once the castle was finally finished being built, Robert's widow, Joan, along with the orphaned grandchildren and the 3 still unmarried daughters of Joan and Robert, they all moved into the castle. While moving in there should have been a time of great celebration and happiness, it just wasn't, because so many members of their family had been lost in such a short period of time that they were just overcome with grief and couldn't really enjoy anything about it. But As time tends to do, it began to heal all wounds as the years went on, and eventually they began to enjoy themselves in the castle. Although whispers around town were starting to think that the castle was cursed because so many weird things happened there. Then in 1908, Joan herself passed away, and the kids and the grandkids found themselves just simply unable to maintain this castle. So eventually it got sold, and it got sold into, I believe first it was a military hospital, because of course it was the beginning of the 1900s, and it was just the right time. They needed so many spaces around the country and around many countries were being turned into hospitals to tend to the wounded soldiers coming home from the Great War. So first it became that, then over the years it just passed through many hands, and I believe now it's part of a university campus, which is really interesting. So many years later, during restorations, there were a lot of workers there and employees, and they started to see some really weird things that would go on. And one worker, he said that he started to see the feet of a woman who was very obviously wearing a fancy ball gown, fancy shoes, descending the stairs, but then it vanished. He never saw more than a foot. The rest of the woman wasn't there, and then when he looked again, that had vanished. Something similar happened to a family when they were doing a tour of the castle. Two of the family members ended up going into one of the rooms of the castle where they saw a third member of their family there, and he was standing there looking just very shocked, very scared. And he said he just saw a man go up the stairs, and you know, that seemed really weird because there had been nobody in the room with him. And so wanting to investigate, they go up the stairs to see if they can find out who it was. But when they get to the top of the stairs, there's just a door there that has no knob and is bolted shut. So nobody could have went up the stairs. And then finally, once the castle was turned into part of the university, and like I mentioned, it was part of the music school, and there's a beautiful piano in there, and if I read this here, it says, and then there's the piano. The Dunsmuir Steinway Grand Piano is played throughout the year during special recitals for large crowds who enjoy the old-timey jazz and beautiful Christmas melodies. But it's not only used during the museum's open hours. Once night has fallen and the castle is locked up, the piano often comes to life and plays on its own. The music is sad and haunting, and many believe Robert Dunsmuir himself is playing his beloved Steinway in the house he never had the luxury of inhabiting. So that's just kind of a sad note to end on there, just imagining him playing his beloved piano that he never got to play in real life. And yes, now I believe that castle is a museum. It's hard because when I was reading the two histories of the castles, they kind of blur together because it's very similar. So yes, now the Craig de Rock Castle is a museum where you can go for tours and just all kinds of beautiful things like that. Now, the other castle we're going to talk about is actually called Hatley Castle. And this one was owned and built by Robert's son, James. And in the 40s and 50s, this castle was turned into a military college as well. And there were a lot of cadets who went to this college. They have a lot of very interesting stories to tell about things that happened to them when they were living inside Hatley Castle. So now first as well, we'll go through a bit of the history of the house. James Dunsmuir was at one time the most influential and wealthy man in the entire province of British Columbia. He was born while his father, who would become a Vancouver Island coal baron, and his mother immigrated from Scotland to British Columbia in 1851. He stepped out of his father's shadow to become a powerful industrialist and politician, holding the positions of both Premier and Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia in very close succession. The mansion Dunsmuir built in 1908 for his large family, Hatley Castle, was designed in the Scottish baronial style, reflecting his heritage. And he had told them, money doesn't matter, just build me what I want. Now, unlike his father's castle, James was able to live in his, and him and his wife and their children, they had 12, but only 9 survived infancy. They loved their home. Now, this mansion boasted 50 rooms on 640 acres that also had farms, a dairy, a slaughterhouse. Eventually, it also had a fishing lodge. And there was just so much on this property. So it says, the gardens were so extensive and magnificent that Dunsmuir had to employ 100 gardeners and groundskeepers to keep it up. That's absolutely insane. It was the type of home that would be hard to leave behind. For the Dunsmuirs, the act of packing up and moving on would prove impossible, even in death. So it says here, despite the luxury in which he lived, James's final days were not happy. One of his 2 sons had died in 1915 when a ship he was on had sank, and the other, it was said, was an alcoholic who had left home to wander aimlessly around the world and dishonor his family's name. That's a very dramatic statement. And his daughters all married and moved far away, living what he believed to be very frivolous lifestyles, which is a lot coming from someone who said, I don't care about the money, just build me what I want. He died in 1920 while out in his fishing lodge on his property, and it was said that shortly afterwards his children had squandered away the entirety of his fortune and they had to sell the home. And they sold it to the government, which again, it became the military academy. And that's when a lot of weird things started happening, especially after James's wife, Laura, died. Now, a lot of cadets have stories similar to this one. How that story goes is that they wake up in the middle of the night because they have this feeling that something is staring at them. The room becomes freezing cold. One cadet described it as standing in an ice-cold spider web. Just a weird feeling all around you. They look, and there's a woman standing there staring down at you. And that's believed to be the spirit of Laura, James's wife. And not only is she looking at you, she will grab you by the leg and try to pull you out of the bed. Then eventually she vanishes. So when this happened to him, he was reluctant at first to talk about it because he thought it sounded insane. But when he finally did, he found out that a lot of the other cadets had the exact same story to tell. Often the ghost of James himself is reported being seen down in the basements, and he's just seen floating around in and out through walls and whatnot, and his spirit's not nearly as angry as his wife Laura's. It makes you wonder what's got her so angry. Why is she so upset? Whatever the case, I wouldn't want to run into her, that's for sure. Anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed hearing about the Hatley and Craigndorock castles in British Columbia. It's so interesting. I've already done so many stories on haunted places in BC, and there's still so many more. I don't know why BC has so many stories, but it does. And we'll probably get into more as time goes on. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you have any paranormal situations that you'd like me to look into more and report back to you my findings. And I hope you guys are having a great week. Thanks so much for all your wonderful support during Vlogmas so far. It's very heartwarming. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.